Hello there everybody, this is Alex from Hardcore Guides, bringing my guide for Dante's Inferno on Infernal difficulty. Today we are doing part 1 entitled Prologue. And this one's going to be probably definitely one of the more easier levels of the entire game, in my opinion. The final boss being an absolute nightmare to beat. And for those that are new to my channel, do not fret because this entire guide has been done. Recording wise, of course, I still got to do commentary, but yes. I have actually beaten this game on Infernal mode. After all these years, I have finally done it. And yeah, so starting off in this very beginning fight, my recommendation for this is just only mainly go for light attacks. I'm just going to call it that. I am playing, of course, on PS3, and I will also change down the gamma brightness later, trust me. It got annoying. But yeah, so I just recommend just going for light attacks. And if you can't get a full combo, that's fine. Just dodge out of the way. Just try to not get surrounded. I know that sounds like common sense, but this part can be a little bit tricky with the fact that like you can easily get surrounded by these enemies, and there's a ton of enemies too. So I did say that this is definitely one of the easier chapters for sure, because this is a relatively hard-ish game. Not incredibly too hard, at least until the final boss, but for the most part, you know, this beginning area is a little easier than it looks, and definitely a little easier when you play it a few more times, because all you really gotta do is just try to at least get that full, you know, main light combo. And if you can't get that and you're about to get attacked, just dodge the way your block, and you don't take that much damage in this part anyway, so it's all good. And plus, as you can see, you know, if the enemies get hit by the fire, they die instantly. Also, all of Prologue is going to be covering all the way up to the Gates of Hell. So of course we're going to be doing the death boss fight, and then we're going to get to the gates and then do the next part from there. Something else I want to recommend too is do not use your heavy attack in this particular, you know, beginning fight anyway, because it just doesn't really do much. You only really have like the one combo to use. Something else to explain real fast before we get to the boss fight itself. I will not be using DLC. That's right. This entire game was beaten without using DLC. So you do not need to buy the DLC relics or any of that stuff. I'm going to get you through it just fine. And I will, of course, shout out any credits that I have found from any other guides that I might have found on the internet. What I'm doing here is, of course, you know, I'm just going for the basic light combo. You can typically get one, maybe even two light combos off in the beginning. And this entire boss fight itself really just kind of relies on the idea of you blocking most of his attacks. There's going to be one attack that shows up like in the third phase that is potentially unblockable. But for the most part, almost all of his attacks are just blockable. So pretty much just, you know, block whenever you feel like he's about to attack, or just block whenever you don't feel confident in taking any hits. On him, I should say. So, yeah, that one right there eventually upgrades once you get past the first phase, upgrades to 2 hits, and then he does like this 3-hit swipe combo. It's relatively telegraphed and somewhat easy enough to figure out. That one right there, I believe, can be blocked, but I think that's the one that, okay, it can be blocked, yes. But I feel like there's one that can't be. It might just be the grab I'm thinking of, but that little combo thing I did, you know, of course I did the full ground combo, but then I eventually just jumped. That's just me being kind of silly. So just ignore that. You don't need to do it. Just take your time with this fight. You know, there's no pressure, no time limit, no nothing. Just block most of his attacks. Go for some nice, easy, light hit combos. And another thing about light attacks is they can be blocked out of. So like, if you're in the middle of like a, you know, a regular light attack, and you feel unsafe, you can pretty much just block almost instantly and be fine. However, with heavy attacks, that's not always the case. It's a lot easier to block a lot faster with light attacks. And that's going to be a running theme of this game. It's going to be a lot of, like, mainly just utilizing animations and stuff to kind of get through it. And I will also be teaching you a little trick that I have found from another guidesman later. And that will come up whenever we're starting to fight off, like, the Guardians and such, which I should have looked at the names of these enemies. I'll do that for part 2. So for now, just kind of bear with me on that. I'll have to look them up later. But yeah, for the most part, death is a really good indicator of how difficult this game could be, and also at the same time kind of not, because he doesn't really do too much damage, and on top of that, most if not all of his attacks can just pretty much be blocked, and you can kind of just prematurely just block an attack just knowing that's probably going to come, and just preemptively just wait for him to do it and then attack him when you feel safe. So relatively speaking, this boss seems intimidating at first, but really kind of is relatively simple and straightforward, which I like. But, you know, that very, very beginning part can also be a little bit intimidating too, because, you know, especially with the enemies just continuously surrounding you and stuff, and that can get kind of a little bit annoying. But of course, if you happen to knock them away, or lead them into like a fire shot, which is kind of hard because it's kind of hard to predict where the fireballs are going to come from, then, you know, they just pretty much just die easily. The most annoying part of that entire beginning fight is the fact that it takes so damn long. And now that Death is finally, well, dead, I guess, and, you know, I'm not going to spoil anything, but, you know, for, like, what happens later in this game, I'm going to try to keep those to a bare minimum for those that might not know. But, yeah, so Death is basically now dead, and now we're going to be, you know, going to find Beatrice's soul and get the cross and all that, and we're going to be, of course, spawning out in this graveyard, and we're going to have these little turds fighting us. I think these are just regular demons. I don't know exactly what their name is. I think they're probably, like, golems or something. I don't know. These are just your basic mooks of the game. This is what we're going to have to be dealing with for practically the rest of the game. So, for those that don't know much about this game, like, yes, of course, it is a God of War clone, but, you know, some people get pissed off when you say that. Some people don't. For me, personally, I don't care if you call it a clone. Just, it's not a ripoff. It's a really good game. I promise. It's a really good game. So something that you want to take into note of this, of course, if you're playing on Infernal difficulty, you probably know how to play the game for the most part now, but obviously, you know, for those that might not know, these are going to be enemies that are just basic fodder that we're going to be eventually using to gain what's called Punish and Absolve, and that's used to upgrade, as you can see, into our skill tree. And depending on how much holy or unholy experience you have, depending on whether or not you absolve or punish enemies, will, of course, gain you more experience. Now, the things that we're going to be leveling up is I'm going to be leveling up my Scythe's Reach. I think I get to level 5 for Unholy. At least level 5, level 6 for level 6 for Holy. Because you want Divine Armor 3. You want Divine Armor 3. You want all the 3 Retribution meter cells. You also want to have at least keep 1, maybe 2, or maybe both of the mana/health at the very end of the game if you can. If you need to use them, that's fine, but try to save them for at least, you know, close to the final boss. And you'll see why when we get there, of course, because that thing is just, you know, it's pretty damn hard. Of course, for this is relatively self-explanatory. I will be using a lot of cross attacks, so I just want to say real quick, for those that find my gameplay potentially boring, I'm going to let you know right now, I'm going to be doing a lot of punish/absolves, and I'm going to be using a lot of cross attacks, because cross, from what I've learned, actually, surprisingly does a lot of damage. I used to think it didn't do that much damage, but I came across, you know, finding out that it actually does. And also those enemies, I think, are called Hornets, I think so. But, yeah, so the other upgrades I'm going to be getting is mainly just, like I said, Divine Retribution. I'm not going to upgrade magic besides just the Divine Retribution. I'm going to be upgrading the Death's Reach. I'm also going to go ahead and start getting these guys killed off for, you know, Unholy, because this place is kind of falling down. I just kind of want to make quick work of them. So I'd recommend just try to get your Holy level 1 as fast as you possibly can. Your Unholy, sorry. Try to get Unholy as fast as you possibly can. So that way we can eventually unlock the counter. We're going to be unlocking both of the counter attacks. And then you also, the last upgrade I recommend is getting both of the extra 2 relic slots. And again, like I explained before, we are not going to be using the DLC relics, so we're going to be sticking with the main ones. I am, at the end game, going to be using the Scythe relic upgrade that does more Scythe damage. The cross one that does more cross damage. Chiako's Bile, that's the one I remember the name of, which I think gives you mana regeneration. And then there's one more I can't remember off the top of my head, but if you're watching this video now, you know, of course, if this is already done by then, if you're just now getting into this, you could just eventually watch at the very end, like the final boss, to see what I've been, you know, running with. Because I think there's one I switch off with. Oh, yeah, the other one is from, I forget his name, but there's a boss that comes up later that gives you a shield relic. And that's the one we're going to use. It gives you extra defense. And something else about relics, too, is, of course, you have to have very specific level of either Unholy or Holy to equip it. And that can seem a little annoying at first, but like I said before, I will be getting you through this game. That's my plan. And I assure you guys that I will make it as safe as I possibly can for this guide. You won't need to do fancy combos. You won't need to do anything too crazy. If you want fancy combos, that's always there for you to look at. But, of course, for me personally, I kind of just want to make it a lot simpler for more of the the casual end of it, like the ones that just want to beat it, because trust me, I feel you, because I have suffered at the hands of this game for years now. I've never beaten on Infernal until recently, and granted, you know, I spent quite a few years not playing the game, but to be fair, you know, my skill has finally upgraded, and I did learn a few more tricks. Again, I will be giving credit to those that I learned from. But as you can see there, I already have, it seems like, level 1 unholy anyway, which is kind of nice that they just give you level 1 for, I think, both slots. So, essentially, of course, I'm just going to go ahead and buy into the parry upgrade, which, of course, can be done by, you know, hitting L2 at the right time and then hitting square/triangle. Now, something that's fun and interesting about the parry, and we'll be using that later on, is if you were to block while in midair, while you're falling down, not only do you have a faster fall with the animation, now I'll be showing that off later, of course, too. Not only do you fall faster, but you also get a parry when you land on the ground if an enemy is doing like a flurry attack. So, for instance, like the Seductress in Lust, you know, she'll be doing a lot of attacks like that, and yeah. So, just bear in mind that, like, if you are coming down from an attack, or you're coming down from the air or whatever, and you're about to land to attack, just hold the, you know, the block button so that we don't get hit. But yeah, like I said, again, like I said earlier, I'm gonna be upgrading my unholy at first. Usually I run holy at first, but I decided to change that up for this and just go unholy. And plus, it doesn't take that many enemies to kind of do this with. It's about 50 because it's 10 XP per punish and per absolve for these small little minions. So you relatively get enough. Again, it's only just 50 enemies that you have to deal it with. Another thing to kind of go into explanation about the relics, which I might explain maybe later on, maybe not, I don't know. Something else to kind of talk about real quick about relics is that in order to upgrade a relic, for those that might not know, you need to collect souls to do it. You need to have it equipped, and you need to kill enemies and get their souls from it. Or just, you need to get souls from anywhere. So, for example, these fountains also give you that too. Also, ignore the evade jump. I don't know, I'm kind of weird. I come from God of War, so I evade and press square while I'm doing it. It's a thing that God of War players would know. Something else I want to talk about real quick, when I was fighting those hornets, as you saw, I was doing the triangle move in air. That's something we're going to be talking about when we're dealing with harder enemies, but something that you can do with hornets, if you want to stay in the air to fight hornets, something I learned is don't do the triangle one, but instead, after you grab a hornet, you want to press the square button or light attack, and then, you know, then go for another grab, because it basically just cancels out the grab, or it cancels out, like, how do I put it? It keeps you kind of like more in midair, is what I'm trying to say, I guess. I'm just saying it completely wrong, but yeah. After you've killed off all the main minions, which they're not too hard, luckily, and of course, you know, like I've mentioned before, I'm going to be upgrading to get the projectile parry as well, so that'll be easier to take out the hornets later on. After you take out them, this guy is going to spawn. He's relatively simple for the most part. If you want to use magic like I did, go right ahead, because there's plenty of magic fountains. There's like 2 of them, and they should give you at least, for the most part, close to, if not full magic. And something else to incorporate in this combo, or just these attacks in general, that if you want to use it on the big Minotaur boss guy, which I'll learn the name in the next part, if you want to just use ranged attacks, go right ahead, because this enemy does not have good range, and they kind of have to get close to you. So just use cross attacks if you feel unsafe. If you feel unsafe about any of these fights at all, use cross attacks. They will help you out tremendously. And, you know, call me newbie, or call me, you know, a novice or a loser or whatever. I don't care, because that's just the way that, you know, it ended up being for me to play through. So, again, if this is a boring playthrough, then I do apologize. I will try to do combos the best I can, but for the most part, especially later on, when we're fighting, like, the armored guardians, then I will eventually be using, like, cross attacks just like no other. And it's just a really good attack as well, because it just seems to do about the same amount of damage as a scythe does. So, something to kind of keep in mind. Now, in terms of avoiding this enemy's attacks, it's relatively simple, because, like, if you are right near it, like, right underneath it, it will typically try to do a stomp attack. So, that's one of those cases of, like, just, you can kind of learn the telegraphs, and then from there, the rest of it's just pretty much just simple. Because, like, every once in a while, you know, if he tries to do, like, a hand slam, like this double fist slam thing, then, you know, you'll pretty much have plenty of time to get out of the way to kind of notice it's coming. Granted, the foot slam attacks are quite quick and a little harder to telegraph, but for the most part, you know, once you learn this game and you get used to these guys, it becomes kind of second nature to know when they're going to attack. And then on top of that, you know, like I said, if you really want to be safe, then you could just use cross attacks. And if you just kind of want to just, you know, have a little bit of fun, you could switch it up with cross attacks and, of course, scythe attacks. And speaking of scythe, I do eventually upgrade to the full triangle, the full heavy combo, but that's not until, like, way later in the game, so I wouldn't worry about upgrading into it. If you want it, that's fine, but I wouldn't recommend doing it. I also wouldn't recommend getting, like, the block plus attacks, just because. I mean, yeah, you can be fancy and cool with it, but it's just, for me, personally, I kind of wanted to go through this game with more of a sense of safety rather than trying to be too combo heavy. But anyway, that's going to be the end of part 1, and I will see you guys for the next part. So, as always, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see y'all next time. So take care, everybody.